Alright, so in an effort to get through the rest of these games and worlds, I'm going through the rest of them a little bit quicker. Hopefully I'll be able to cut down on the format a little bit, so um yeah, bear with me. We'll probably at least go through every game's picks and bans, and I think we can analyze the compositions and look at the result and pretty much explain what happened. So a lot of the more important games I've already reviewed, so when it gets into this portion of group stages, these games aren't as important. And specifically, I need to get to semifinals and finals, which finals coverage will probably be the least amount of coverage on because not a whole lot to work with there. Okay, so Rek'Sai, Annie, and Lulu for SKT. Mordekaiser and GP standard red side bans, and Azir. Azir is a good ban against SKT because Faker and Hoon both play that really well. SKT knows that they can get a priority pick with the Elise, and Kalista is fine for them to leave up because Bang's capable of playing it, and they don't necessarily need to ban it because Bang can play around it. So I'll probably start skipping through picks and bans a little bit more frequently. So that was Darius Tristana. I want to say that those are really good picks for the patch that Worlds was played on. So EDG's comp looks a little bit outdated. I want to say that's partly due to them not having a coach. I think they would have done a lot better at this tournament if their coaching staff wouldn't have imploded, but is that going to be Faker's Rise? It is. Okay. I don't remember exactly what champions were played in what games. Worlds was a little bit ago at this point. This is November already, and I still haven't got through all the games, but we're going to make it since I committed to going through each game's picks and bans. So, right off the bat, I just want to say SKT's got a more balanced composition. They have a better game, or a better late game. EDG's got more of a mid game, early skirmish comp, and the TF doesn't really fit the rest of their team comp, I want to say. They could have picked something like Diana and had like a real chance to get some early damage off on them. I want to say again that's mostly them not having a coach. The comp doesn't look that bad, but they're fully committed to that mid early game. If they had like some kind of like a dynamic champion, someone that can do well in mid game and do well in the late game, someone with like a little bit more mobility. Uh, yeah, I don't think TF was the greatest pick there. And like I said, we're not going to take the time to go through all of these games anymore, so looks like they went heads up. Just judging from Mako's positioning there, Bang had to know there was a gank coming in, so he wisely continues to back away. Wolf has to blow the flash. And there's a good gank by Clearlove, just mainly to swing the lane in Callista's favor. She kind of needs a little bump to become a little bit more abusive. She's capable of laning against anyone, but if you give her a bump in lane, then she's really abusive. She'll have an easy time zoning and getting good damage off. Yeah, specifically, like I was saying, I only see EDG's comp capable of winning this in the mid game, so falling behind any amount of kills is not that great. They have to stay within striking range. Yeah, and if SKT gets an ace like they just did, then how are you going to come back with that team comp? Gnar, Gragas, and TF. So they tried to catch out Faker. Okay, I do remember this play. Bang just did a lot of damage in the fight. That's the fact that Tristana is just like the superior team fighting AD carry on this patch. And Bang knows how to play her, so. EG should have probably banned that and not put so much priority on Kalista. Or if you're gonna play Kalista, then make sure to win the early lanes. You can't like pick anything that can potentially go neutral. Gnar and TF are both potentially neutral. If you want to pick someone to win lane, then like you have to pick something super abusive. I don't really know that you can win lane against Faker though, so maybe that's part of it. Okay. So after SKT gets an ace, like there's no way to come back for EG. They don't have as good of a comp, and go right into the next game. Bangkok Titans versus H2K. This will be one of those games that it's not going to be too interesting to watch, so we will reluctantly go over picks and bans. Rek'Sai, Thresh, and Tom. Yeah, so Rek'Sai was pretty heavily prioritized at Worlds as well. I think that was something that a lot of people saw coming. I didn't expect to see it banned, but it's Bangkok Titans. They did get the first pick Lulu, so I'm hesitant to call it a mistake. First of all, just because anytime you're dealing with like two evenly matched teams, you may want to leave some strategies out just to see how well they perform on it. If it turns out that they want to play some poke strategy that's not going to work against whatever you've got drafted, then it's it's beneficial sometimes to lay the trap in picks and bans. Okay. I want to say letting Kjarnan get Callista is probably a mistake. H2K chose to ban the Elise. So, realistically, what I want to say the picks and bans were like for H2K, they decided that they were going to go for Elise, or not Elise, but a Tristana and Lulu comp, or give it up and pick the Callista, which is what we saw with EDG and SKT as well. So they obviously didn't get Lulu, but um, maybe that was a prevalent thought going through their minds at the time. So we have to remember what patch this was on, of course. So all of my judgment will be based on this patch, which I believe it was 5.18. Grongus pick. This is before he was disabled. I think that actually had a huge effect on some teams. Teams with weaker junglers suffered from the Gragas being removed. Yeah, so Bangkok Titans coming out with the Yasuo. Uh, their whole team comp is a Yasuo comp, so want to say that you could kind of see it coming, but all those other champions are fine on their own without Yasuo, so you can't really see it coming. It's just kind of like a pocket pick that you can pull out. I don't really like Lissandra. I think that pick fucking sucks. Maybe HGK has practiced it a lot though. So yeah, it doesn't really matter. They smash them anyway, so. Bangkok Titans versus EDG. We're of course not going to go through the game. I mean, really, how much worth is it to go over Bangkok Titans draft phase? Because it didn't seem like they knew what they were doing that much, but uh, regardless, we'll go through it anyway. So EDG is going to be forced into GP Mordekaiser bans, Callista and TF. So Bangkok Titans are just banning what they've seen at the tournament. They saw EDG play Callista and TF, and they're like, "Well, we don't want to deal with that." It's not actually a bad idea to just like force your opponent onto champions that they don't play that much, or if they've shown well on certain champions you just don't want to deal with it. That's good. So Rek'Sai ban coming out, and EDG is forced to ban Elise in response to that. So if one picks Lisa and the other can just pick Gragas, or there's a few other picks, but really depends on what that person plays. So Bangkok Titans get the Lulu, and yeah, I want to say it's not a mistake from EDG to let that go through to uh, the lesser team, unless they've got like a ridiculous Jinx player, and for some reason you just can't deal with it. Then yeah, ban one of those two champions. But against better teams, you have to ban Lulu over Elise there, and just give up the Elise. There's like not anything you can do. So Braum and Gragas were pretty safe picks. Those are going to be good for any team comp that just like lets you not give anything away and gives you a little bit of ubiquity. While Bangkok Titans are pretty much showing their whole comp. And Tom Kench is actually up, so I think that would be a good pick to round out Bangkok Titans composition. Yeah, I didn't like the Echo picks in this tournament very much. They opted for Thresh and Rengar. So right off the bat, if you look at BKT's team comp, they have no sustained AP damage. Like Lulu is supportive, so she's not going to deal as much damage. You got to look at the kit. They have no primary magic damage dealer on this team, so what that means is Gragas, Braum, effectively everyone on the enemy team can build nothing but armor and not get punished for it because there's only token amounts of magic damage. So that's why BKT's team comp is no good. Oh, Depth pulled out the Lucian. Yeah, that's kind of like a disrespect pick. The game is like way closer than it should have been. BKT shouldn't even have kills to be honest, but the Jinx starts picking up. Yeah, not the greatest play. H2K versus SKT, so this is like you're up against the best team in the world. What do you ban against them? So if it's blue side versus red side, you know that GP and Mordekaiser are going to be banned. So they've only got really one ban. So out of your 3 bans that you have control over, if you include their last ban as control, out of the 4 bans that you have, you leave up maybe 5 picks that you want, or 6 picks. That way you're guaranteed to get one of them, and you only give up one of them. Now, if you leave up, like, let's say 7, and you ban out the other 3 you don't want to deal with, that only leaves you with, like, 3 other priority picks. So if you only take one, then they get the other 2 automatically. So you have to worry about which champions you're banning. And if you want to use a throwaway ban, then it's much better to go for a target ban against one player as opposed to uh, whatever else you would ban as priority picks, because then you're really just banning priority picks away from yourself at that point, instead of weighing your champion pool against theirs and knowing what they can play. So, I mean, obviously at the pro level, you expect them to be able to play everything fairly well, but SKT pulling out the Lulu ban on red side, that is not unexpected. So H2K probably should have seen that coming and not ban the Elise, force them to first pick, or force them to ban Lulu or Elise. They'll obviously ban Lulu, and that'll give you the first pick Elise. I mean, theoretically, if they wanted Azir or Rek'Sai or any of that other stuff, then SKT would have had to give Lulu in order to get Azir. So, I mean, there's a lot of strategy that goes into it. I think against the best team in the world, you kind of want to cheese them a little bit. Leave some of the priority picks up, but don't let them get 2 in one rotation, because that would be devastating. And H2K kind of like neutrally picks Thresh, which shouldn't be a priority pick in this matchup. Even if the supports both heavily valued Thresh, he's not like a super value in this tournament. And I think that was a mistake by H2K. The Darius and Kalista are both pretty high priority considering Lulu's off the table. So you'd have to face against Kalista as Tristana or Jinx without having a Lulu, and that's actually a lot harder to deal with than if you did have Lulu. Gragas and Renekton. Okay, so I think like against a better team, you just kind of like play safe and maybe hope to draft a better late game comp, or like pick such an early game comp that you have a chance to shit on them early. And I think that's what H2K is doing, going for the chance to win early as opposed to trying to scale against one of the best teams in the world, which isn't going to happen. Okay, so I like H2K's comp based on the fact that they're playing against SKT, but yeah. Easy Hoon on the Karthus, that's just a lot of damage. There's pause or something. And as you would expect, SKT is taking this game pretty easily. I really don't like Garden's build with the Berserker Greaves and Pickaxe, but I think he should have got an Avarice Blade instead of picking up the Berserker Greaves. Maybe he's worried about efficiency when he actually backs. Some AD carries aren't, some are more concerned with itemization efficiency as opposed to backing efficiency, so even if H2K is on even gold, SKT's got the better team fight comp. Unless you get in there with Renekton and Gragas really earlier on Dragon or something like that, maybe that's where they would shine, but even then against like SKT, you have to assume that they're not going to make any mistakes at that fight, so it was pretty even, could have gone like either way until this fight probably. SKT just takes like Excuse me. SKT just takes like a huge momentum swing off of this. And Rengar pick is pretty much worthless now. I'm sorry, I didn't mean Rengar, I meant Renekton. The Renekton pick is pretty much worthless if you don't use it early. So I think it's like decent against Darius, but could have been used a little bit better. They're playing like a little bit more too default team oriented. Against Karthus, you really can't afford to team fight against that, especially against Darius, Eve. These are all team fighting champions for SKT, so your best bet is to spread them thin and go for picks. H2K has got a lot of team fight synergy. Is actually pretty good, so kind of giving them a run for their money here. Yeah, diving against Karthus is a mistake, so that is a bad play. You should have just kept sieging there if you're H2K. So and after you make some mistakes, SKT is just going to take the game. EDG versus H2K. But this is day 5, I think. Anyways, this is Group C, of course. Thresh ban, that's pretty surprising. I think that they saw H2K first pick Thresh, so they're like, okay, this is key to your strategy. Or they just wanted to mess with H2K maybe a little bit. You can't really tell for sure what's going on in these people's minds who are in charge of picks and bans. Some would call them coaches, some would call them analysts. I'm more inclined to think that they're a combination of the two, but the person that actually decides might actually be just the coach. Yeah, I don't know what to make out of these picks and bans, to be honest. They let Lulu up to ban Rek'Sai. So they're saying, okay, we'll just play Callista against your Lulu comp. Okay, so EDG started off that fight with Tom Kench ultimate. And Hjarnan got caught off on the side. So yeah, at that point they're basically screwed, so. Yeah, and Kasing obviously dies there, but that was more Hjarnan and his fault together than anything. Just to be standing where they were. Pretty low score game, and gold is even right now. Alright, so we just missed the big mistake from H2K. So they go on to Mako, and Hjarnen's just like way overextending there. What a wombo. That Gragas ultimate. Like, holy shit. If you're gonna make a pick like that, H2K is playing to make a pick here. Your ward needs to be at their blue. So you can see that kind of play developing. That's not just like Gragas specific, that's just in case anyone wanted to flank you. So this is a poor setup by H2K, it's kind of lazy. This will work most of the time, but not unless you have like a huge advantage. So instead of like dropping all those wards there, they should just dropped one over the blue, and that would have stopped this overextension a little bit. So Hjarnen sees Deft and he's like, oh shit, he must be out of position. But what he doesn't realize is that his entire team is in fact the ones that are out of position. Whoops. Sorry. Yeah, that Gragas ultimate was massive. Even if no other fights went EDG's way, like that fight alone is almost enough to swing the game and make Orianna ult useless, because once your team can't fully commit or you're not capable of turning a fight, and Orianna ult doesn't 100 to 0 their entire team, then it just becomes worthless. And finally, SKT versus BKT. Group C didn't have very interesting pick and bans, so GP ban actually came out from blue side for SKT, so to me that it just says that they didn't want to pick it for themselves. And for some reason, I guess BKT wasn't going to ban it. I'm still not concerned or convinced that they wouldn't have banned it. But they probably want to ban GP as a failsafe for whatever they want to play. And of course, every time they're setting themselves up for the first pick at least. Darius Rek'Sai. I think Rek'Sai is the correct pick into Elise. Lee Sin doesn't do as good. Gragas maybe. Then he gets disabled sometime. We won't go into the whole debacle of unplayed games or games that shouldn't have been played and all that stuff, so just know that there was an issue at this Worlds that made it so Gragas couldn't cast his Q, and he became unpickable for the rest of the tournament, based on the fact that Fnatic EDG had to replay some games, and they're not really worth watching. It's not anything of circumstance. So I think Marin actually ended up being known for his Fiora after this tournament, so that's like a personal counterpick to Darius, I think. Or just something that he's comfortable playing against. Maybe not even necessarily a counterpick, but he's like, yeah, I got whatever you got, I can cover it. So Fiora is a champion that was guaranteed to go through most picks and bans at Worlds. So if your top laner couldn't even play it passively, then like it really hurts your team's strategic element, and it forced him onto Darius most of the time. And the thing with Darius is you can draft against him exceptionally well by picking chain CC and stuff that is capable of peeling him off of you. So Thresh is something that's good against Darius. Sivir Ultimate will be good against Darius, and TF obviously won't be the greatest against Darius because of his short range, but the lockdown from his gold card and the red card slow from AoE should help a little bit. SKT just like probably went through some of these picks and bans knowing that they could powerhouse a little bit, so they're banning out the X Factors, the GP, and the Yasuo, and oh, they did ban Gragas. Okay, so I didn't notice that. Not like it matters too much, but that's what influenced the Rek'Sai pick. And overall, since SKT knew that they could brute force these games a little bit, they probably set up their picks and bans to get Elise a little bit more often. I don't want to necessarily say that it was the correct pick in general strategy, but it was definitely the highest priority jungler in this tournament. And anytime you have a jungler that can play it, then you should be picking it pretty much at this patch. So, yeah, we'll leave it at that.